My father always introduced me with a tone of polite pity, telling his friends I had settled for a small life in a classroom. He spent 30 years calling me a disappointment. But 3 weeks ago, when he saw my face on national television, his smirk finally died. I wasn't his quiet failure anymore. I was the woman holding the match that was about to burn his carefully constructed kingdom to the ground. The fluorescent lights in the hallway of Maple Hollow Middle School always hummed with a sound that sat somewhere between a headache and a threat. It was Monday morning, and the air already smelled like wet wool, floor wax, and the specific, high-frequency anxiety of 300 adolescents preparing for state testing. I stood by my classroom door, number 214, watching the chaotic stream of students flow past. 33 years old. That was the number on my driver's license. 8 years. That was how long I had been standing in this doorway, teaching 8th grade English and history to kids who often came to school hungry and left exhausted. My morning had started with a jammed copier and a frantic email from the vice principal about the upcoming student performance night. We were short on chairs, we were short on microphones, we were short on patience, but apparently, we had plenty of pressure. The district wanted test scores up by 5%. A mandate delivered by administrators who hadn't stepped foot inside a classroom since the mid-90s. "Good morning, Ms. Kelly," a student shouted, nearly tripping over his own untied shoelaces. "Good morning, Jason," I said, smiling instinctively. "Tie your shoes before you become a liability lawsuit." He grinned and ducked into the room. I took a breath, holding it in my chest for a second before exhaling. This was the job. It was messy, loud, and chronically underfunded, but it was real. I loved the grit of it. I loved the moment a kid finally understood why Gatsby was tragic, or why the Industrial Revolution actually mattered to their own lives. But outside these walls, in the zip code where I slept but did not really live, my life was viewed through a very different lens. That evening, I drove 20 minutes north to the Heights. The houses there grew wider, the lawns greener, and the fences higher. My parents lived in a colonial-style fortress that smelled of lemon polish and silence. Dinner was a mandatory weekly ritual, a penance I paid for being their only child. My mother, Eleanor, was setting the table when I walked in. She wore a cashmere cardigan that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. "You look tired." "Eva," she said without looking up. Her tone wasn't sympathetic. It was critical. It implied that my fatigue was a result of poor management, not hard work. "It is a busy week." "Mom," I said, placing a bottle of wine on the counter. "Performance night is on Thursday." "Oh, that little school play?" she asked. "It is a district showcase," I corrected gently. "It matters to the kids." My father, Richard, walked in then. He was a man who took up space even when he was standing still. He wore his silver hair like a crown and his suit like armor. He was the kind of man who shook hands with a grip that was meant to crush, just a little, to let you know who held the power. He poured himself a scotch and looked at me with that familiar, bemused expression, still playing in the dirt. "Eva?" he asked. "I am teaching. Dad. Same difference." He laughed, a sharp, barking sound. "I was talking to Jim Miller today. You know Jim? Runs the equity firm downtown. His daughter just made partner in Chicago. She is 29. I stiffened. I knew exactly where this was going. It went here every Tuesday. Good for her, I said, keeping my voice even. She is making real money. Eva, he continued, sitting at the head of the table, building a legacy. Not wiping noses and grading papers for pennies. I do not know why you insist on this lifestyle. It is beneath you. It is a career. Dad, an honorable one. It is a fallback life, he snapped, his amusement vanishing. You are a lowly teacher. Eva, you are a civil servant. You exist on the margins of the real world. You rely on the generosity of people like me, people who actually generate value. I gripped my fork until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to throw it in his face. 2 days ago, I had submitted a 60-page application for the District Director of Curriculum and Instruction role. It was a massive step up, a policy-shaping position that required intellect, strategy, and vision. I was one of 3 finalists. I had a shot at running the academic strategy for the entire county, but I bit my tongue. If I told him, he would make a call. He would pull a string, or worse, if I didn't get it, he would use it as ammunition for the next decade. See? Even the schools do not want you. I am happy where I am. I lied. My mother sighed, placing a roast chicken in the center of the table. We just want you to settle down with something stable. Eva, maybe meet a nice man from your father's firm. Someone who can take care of you so you do not have to work so hard for so little. I looked at them. 2 people who measured worth in tax brackets and country club memberships. They didn't see me. They saw a defective investment. Pass the potatoes, please, I said. The next morning, the hangover from their disappointment was heavier than the fatigue from the workload. I arrived at school early, needing the quiet of my classroom to center myself, but the hallway was blocked by stacks of cardboard boxes. They towered near the main office, wrapped in clear plastic. I stopped, frowning. We had been begging for new textbooks for 3 years. We had been begging for whiteboard markers since September. I saw the logo stamped on the side of the boxes. It was a stylized, golden tree with deep roots. The Larkwell Education Foundation. I knew the name. Everyone in Maple Hollow knew the name. It was the premier charitable organization in the county. The golden goose that funded the new stadium scoreboard and the superintendent's innovation initiative. I walked over to the stack. A few custodians were moving them, looking annoyed. What is in these? I asked. New tablets. One of them grunted. District says every classroom gets a set. I blinked. That was thousands of dollars of equipment. I reached out and touched one of the boxes. The cardboard felt soft, worn at the corners. The packing tape looked yellowed, like it had been sitting in a warehouse for a long time. I pulled a pen from my pocket and slit the tape on the top box. Hey, Ms. Kelly, you probably shouldn't, the custodian started. But I already had the flap open. Inside, there were 20 tablets stacked in foam slots. They looked sleek at first glance. I pulled one out. It was heavy. Heavier than the current models. I turned it over. There was a shiny silver sticker on the back. Donated by the Larkwell Education Foundation. I ran my thumb over the edge of the sticker. It was thick. I picked at the corner, peeling it back just a fraction of an inch. Underneath the silver foil, there was the sticky residue of another label. I squinted. I could see the faint, etched letters in the gray plastic casing of the device itself. Prop of St. Jude's Hospital, 2018. I froze. 2018. That was 6 years ago. In tech years, that was a lifetime. These weren't new. They were discarded hospital inventory. I slid the tablet back into the slot and closed the box. Where is the inventory manifest? I asked. The custodian shrugged. Office has it. Just told to move 'em. I walked straight to the main office. The secretary, a sweet woman named Linda who perpetually looked overwhelmed, handed me the clipboard when I asked. I am just checking the serials for my room, I said, keeping my voice casual. The paperwork was a mess. Usually, district inventory forms required detailed columns. Make, model, serial number, asset tag, condition. This sheet had one column, item, digital learning device, quantity, 500, source, Larkwell donation. There were no serial numbers, no model years, no value estimation, just a blanket acceptance of 500 units of digital learning device. I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned to see Barbara Halloway. Barbara was 60 years old, a science teacher who had survived 5 superintendents and 3 strikes. She was the backbone of this building. Walk with me. Eva, she said quietly. We walked down the hall, away from the office. Barbara didn't look at me. She looked straight ahead, her heels clicking a steady rhythm on the linoleum. I saw you looking at the manifest, she said. The tablets are garbage. Barb, I whispered. They are 6 years old. They are hospital cast-offs. They probably do not even run the software we use for testing. Barbara stopped by the water fountain and leaned in. lowering her voice. Do not say that out loud. Why? The district is acting like we just won the lottery. If these things don't work, we need to know. Eva, look at me. I looked. Her eyes were hard. Serious. The Larkwell Foundation is not just a donor. They are the mortgage payers for the district's reputation. The superintendent has a photo op scheduled for Thursday night. He is going to announce the digital leap forward. If you ask questions about where the gear came from, or why the paperwork is blank, you will not be seen as diligent. You will be labeled ungrateful. But it is fraud, isn't it? I asked. If they are claiming these are new. Stop, Barbara hissed. She looked around to see if anyone was listening. You want that curriculum job, don't you? My stomach dropped. How did you know? People talk. You are a shoo-in. Eva, unless you become a problem, the foundation's money has strings. Those strings are tied around the superintendent's hands, and he moves when they pull. Do not cut the strings unless you are ready to be strangled by them. She patted my arm, her face softening into a mask of polite collegiality as a student walked by. Have a great class. Ms. Kelly. She walked away, leaving me standing there with the cold realization that the gift was a lie, and everyone at the top already knew it. Thursday arrived with the force of a hurricane. The performance night was the biggest event of the year. The gymnasium was being transformed into an auditorium. Bleachers were pulled out. Heavy velvet curtains were hung, and a lighting rig was suspended from the steel rafters. The air was thick with hairspray and nervous energy. I was backstage, managing the chorus. We had 60 kids in polyester robes who were vibrating with sugar and adrenaline. I need everyone to focus. I clapped my hands, quiet voices, eyes on me. I did a final head count. We were missing a microphone stand. I sighed and jogged out onto the stage to grab one from the wings. The stage was bathed in blue light. The rigging overhead was massive, a heavy steel truss holding 20 distinct spotlights. It hummed with electricity. I grabbed the mic stand and turned to head back. That was when I heard it. Creak. It was a sound that didn't belong. It wasn't the settling of the building. It was the sound of metal grinding against metal under distress. I looked up, above center stage, where the main spotlight was focused. One of the heavy steel cables holding the truss seemed to vibrate. Ping, a bolt, no bigger than my thumb, dropped from the ceiling and hit the stage floor 6 feet away from me. It bounced with a hollow clatter. My blood turned to ice. Clear the stage. I screamed. The students backstage froze. The few kids on the main deck looked at me, confused. Get off the stage! Now! Move! I didn't wait. I ran toward the 3 students standing near the center, grabbing the nearest one by the shoulder and shoving him toward the stairs. Run! I heard the snap. It sounded like a gunshot. The primary cable on the left side gave way. The massive steel truss swung down like a pendulum. I dove, covering the student I had pushed. The crash was deafening. The truss slammed into the stage floor, shattering the spotlights. Glass exploded outward. The wood of the stage splintered. A cloud of dust and plaster billowed up, choking the air. Silence followed. Absolute, terrified silence. Then, the screaming started. I scrambled up, coughing. Are you okay? I yelled, checking the student. He was shaking, eyes wide, but unhurt. I looked at the wreckage. The lighting rig, which weighed hundreds of pounds, was embedded in the floorboards exactly where the choir had been standing 5 minutes ago. I stood up, my legs trembling. Teachers were running in from the hallway. The principal, Mr. Henderson, came bursting through the double doors, his face pale. What happened? Who did this? He shouted. I walked over to the fallen truss. The dust was settling on my blouse. I looked at the cable that had snapped. It was dangling from the ceiling, swinging gently. I looked at the end of the wire. Steel cables fray when they break. They unravel like rope, individual strands snapping one by one under tension. This cable didn't look frayed. The end was clean, sharp. It looked like it had been cut halfway through, leaving just enough metal to hold, until it didn't, or it was a clamp failure. I looked at the connection point on the truss. The safety pin, The backup mechanism designed to prevent exactly this type of failure was missing entirely. Not broken, missing. I felt a hand on my arm. It was the facilities manager, a sweating, nervous man named Frank. "You okay? Ms. Kelly, you okay?" he asked, his voice high and tight. "Frank?" I said, pointing at the rig. "Where is the safety pin?" He blinked, sweat dripping down his temple. "What?" "The safety pin for the truss. And look at that cable. That is not wear and tear." Frank stepped in front of me, blocking my view of the wreckage. "It was an accident. Old equipment. We have been saying we need upgrades. This proves it. Just an accident." He was talking too fast. He wasn't looking at the damage. He was looking at the door. I backed away. I needed air. I went to the teacher's lounge and sat down. My hands shaking, I pulled out my phone. I needed to call someone, but I didn't know who. My parents? No. They would tell me I was being dramatic. The police? And say what? That a cable looked weird? My phone buzzed. A notification. New email. I stared at the screen. It wasn't from a district address. It was from truthseeker88protonmail.com. The subject line was in all caps. "The donations are a show." My thumb hovered over the screen. I shouldn't open it. It was spam. It was a virus. I opened it. The body of the email was short. "They didn't fix the rig because the money went somewhere else. Look at who signs the checks." Attached was a single image, a screenshot. It looked like a page from a digital ledger. It was blurry, low resolution, like someone had taken a photo of a computer screen with a phone. The columns showed payouts, consulting fees, vendor, Apex Strategic Solutions. The amount was $50,000. The date was 2 weeks ago, and at the bottom, in the authorized by field, the name was blurred out, pixelated, but I knew the shape of the signature. I knew the aggressive loop of the R and the sharp slash of the K. I had seen that signature on my report cards. I had seen it on checks for my college tuition. I had seen it on birthday cards signed by a secretary, Richard Kelly, my father. I dropped the phone on the table. It clattered loudly in the empty room. My father didn't work for the school district. He was a private equity consultant. He had no business authorizing payments from a school foundation ledger. Unless the foundation wasn't a charity, unless it was a funnel. I stood up. I needed to find Frank. I found him near the loading dock, smoking a cigarette with a ferocity that suggested he was trying to consume the tobacco in one drag. "Frank," I said. He jumped, dropping the cigarette. "Ms. Kelly, you should go home. District canceled the performance. Safety check." "Frank, who maintained the rig?" I asked. "Who signed off on the safety inspection?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. He ground the cigarette butt into the pavement with his boot. We contracted it out. He mumbled, "To who?" "Look, Ms. Kelly," he snapped, his voice cracking. "You are a nice lady. You are a good teacher. Do not make this political." "Political?" I stepped closer. "A lighting rig almost killed a dozen children. Frank, that is not politics. That is negligence. It is bigger than you think," he hissed. He looked terrified, genuinely terrified. "Just go back to your classroom. Stick to history. Leave the operations alone." He turned and walked away, almost running, disappearing into the boiler room. I drove to my parents' house that night. I didn't call first. I told myself I was going there to check on them, to see if they had heard about the accident at the school, but deep down, I knew I was going there to look at my father's face. I needed to see if the man who raised me was capable of what that email suggested. The house was quiet. My mother was likely at her book club. I let myself in with my key. The foyer was dark, but light spilled from the crack under the study door. I walked softly down the hallway. The plush carpet swallowed the sound of my footsteps. I heard his voice. He was on the phone. He sounded calm. He sounded like the man who commanded boardrooms. "No, it is handled," he said. "Nobody was hurt. It is a non-issue." A pause. "The narrative stays positive. Jim, we spin it. Aging infrastructure highlights the need for the foundation's support. It is actually a good thing. It creates urgency. He laughed, a low, rich chuckle. Don't worry about the inventory. The labels are gone. It is clean. I pushed the door open. My father spun around in his leather chair. He didn't look guilty. He didn't look caught. He looked annoyed. Eva, he said, lowering the phone but not hanging up. We do not knock anymore? I stood in the doorway, still wearing my dusty clothes from the school. You are talking about the accident, I said. My voice was trembling, but I forced it to be steady. You are talking about the rig. He sighed and spoke into the phone. I have to go. Family drama. He hung up and placed the phone on his mahogany desk. He looked at me with that pitying smile. I heard there was a mishap at the school. He said, Everyone is fine, right? A mishap? I stepped into the room. Dad, 1,000 pounds of steel fell on the stage. It was tampered with, and I just heard you say it was a good thing. He stood up and walked over to the sidebar to pour a drink. You are hysterical, Eva. This is why you are not cut out for leadership. You let your emotions cloud the bigger picture. The bigger picture? I asked. I received an email. Dad, about the foundation, about checks. He paused. The glass didn't clink against the bottle. His hand was perfectly steady. But the stillness was unnatural. He turned slowly. An email? He asked. From whom? Anonymous. He laughed, and the tension broke. He shook his head as he poured the amber liquid. Anonymous. Internet trolls. Conspiracy theorists. You are smarter than that. Eva. Or at least, I paid for an education that should have made you smarter than that. He walked over to me and placed a hand on my shoulder. It felt heavy. Look at you, he said, brushing a smudge of dust from my blazer. You are a mess. You are working yourself to death for people who do not care. The foundation is trying to help your pathetic little school. If things break, it is because the system is broken, not the people trying to fix it. He took a sip of his drink, his eyes locking onto mine. Go home, Eva. Take a hot bath. Stop being dramatic. Leave the thinking to the adults. He patted my cheek. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the fine lines around his eyes. I saw the expensive watch on his wrist. I saw the absolute, unshakable arrogance of a man who believes he is untouchable. He wasn't protecting me. He was managing me. I pulled away from his touch. Good night, Dad, I said. I walked out of the study. I walked out of the house. I sat in my car in the driveway, gripping the steering wheel. I looked back at the house, glowing warm and golden in the night. It looked perfect. It looked stable, but I knew better now. The foundation was rotten, and I was going to be the one to dig it up. I put the car in reverse and backed out, leaving the perfect house behind. I had work to do. The days following the collapse of the lighting rig were defined by a silence that felt heavy and manufactured. The district did not close the school. They did not launch a public inquiry. Instead, they dispatched a cleaning crew that arrived at 3 a.m. to scrub the stage, patch the floorboards, and erase the evidence of the near catastrophe. By Tuesday, the gymnasium looked exactly as it had before, minus the overhead truss. It was as if the accident had never happened, but I knew it had. The sound of that snapping cable echoed in my head every time I walked under a doorway. I sat at my desk during my prep period, staring at the district's internal requisition portal on my laptop screen. I had spent the last 48 hours trying to trace the paper trail of the donations. I wanted to know where the tablets came from. I wanted to know who had signed off on the lighting rig maintenance. I typed in the request code for the Larkwell Donation Inventory Manifest. The screen loaded, the little circle spinning for an agonizing 10 seconds. Status: pending authorization. I tried the maintenance logs for the gymnasium. Status: restricted access. Contact administrator. I picked up the phone and dialed the district procurement office. I knew the woman who ran it. A perpetually exhausted civil servant named Brenda. Brenda. It is Eva Kelly. I said, Oh, hi Eva, she said. Her voice sounded tight, guarded. I am trying to pull the asset tags for the new tablets we got. The system is locking me out. I need to register them for the software licenses before the students can use them. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I heard the click of a keyboard, then a sigh. Eva, I cannot give you those files. Why not? I asked. I am the grade-level chair. I need them for instruction. They have been flagged for administrative review, she said. The superintendent's office put a hold on all data regarding the Larkwell grants. They said they are auditing the values for tax purposes. It is out of my hands. Brenda, I lowered my voice. The tablets are used. They are not new. If we are claiming full value for tax write-offs on garbage equipment, that is… Eva, stop. She cut me off. The sharpness in her voice startled me. Do not ask me to open that file. I have a pension to think about. Just teach your class. The line went dead. I stared at the receiver. This was not just bureaucratic incompetence. Incompetence is slow and messy. This was fast and organized. This was a wall. I needed a way around it. Later that afternoon, I walked to the edge of the faculty parking lot. A silver sedan was waiting for me, the engine idling. I opened the passenger door and slid in. Marcus Thorne was a school board aide, a young man with ambition written all over his sharp suits and the nervous way he constantly checked his phone. We had gone to college together, and he still owed me for helping him pass statistics his senior year. He didn't look at me. He kept his eyes on the windshield. You should not be seen in my car. Eva, he said, I need to know what is going on. Marcus, Brenda in procurement shut me down. The inventory logs are locked. He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Of course they are locked. Do you think they leave the receipts for the bribe money lying around on the server? Bribe money? I asked. It is a charity. Marcus, it is a machine. Eva, he said, finally turning to look at me. His eyes were tired. The Larkwell Foundation is not just donating money. They are buying the district. Explain it to me, I said. He tapped his fingers on the steering wheel. Okay, it works like this. The foundation donates, say $200,000 for technology upgrades. The district accepts the money. The board praises the foundation. Then, the district hires a specific vendor to supply the tech, a vendor recommended by the foundation. And the vendor? I asked. The vendor is owned by a cousin of a board member, or a business partner of the donors. Marcus said, they charge double the market rate for the equipment. The money flows in from the foundation, passes through the school, and flows right back out to the people who donated it, minus a skim for the consultants who set it up. The school gets junk equipment. The donors get a tax write-off and a profit on the back-end contract, and the superintendent gets to cut a ribbon on the news. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. It was a loop. A perfect closed loop of corruption masquerading as philanthropy. And the lighting rig? I asked. Marcus grimaced. That was sloppy. They cut the maintenance budget to pay for the event styling, meaning the banners and the flowers. The donors wanted the stage to look bigger for the cameras. They ordered the facilities team to remove safety bracing to improve sightlines. Who ordered it? I asked. He shook his head. No paper trail for that. Just a verbal command. Make it look good. That is the motto. Eva, make it look good. He reached across the console and opened the glove box. He pulled out a folded piece of paper and handed it to me. This is off the record, he said. If you say I gave this to you, I will call you a liar. I unfolded the paper. It was a printed email chain. The subject line was staffing alignment. I scanned the text. It was a discussion about the assistant principal position opening up next year. Candidate B is the most qualified. One email read, but the foundation prefers candidate A. He understands the partnership dynamic better. Understood. The reply read, we will adjust the interview scoring rubric to favor candidate A. They are picking the staff? I whispered. They are picking the people who will protect the money. Marcus said. I looked at him. Why are you telling me this? Because I have a kid starting kindergarten next year, he said softly, and I do not want him going to a school that is a front for a money laundering operation, but I cannot fight them. Eva, I am a staffer. You are tenured. You have protections. I do not. He unlocked the doors. Get out, Eva, and be careful. If you disrupt the storyline, you become a problem, and they solve problems efficiently. I walked back into the school building, the piece of paper burning a hole in my pocket. The hallway was empty, the janitors just starting their evening rounds. I went straight to the storage room on the second floor. This was where the overflow donations were being kept. I had a key, but I usually only used it to grab extra paper towels. I unlocked the door and flipped on the light. The room smelled of dust and ozone. Stacks of the Larkwell boxes were piled against the wall. Digital learning device. The generic label mocked me. I pulled a box down and opened it. I took out a tablet. I took out another. I took out 10. I lined them up on a work table. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. I examined the backs of the devices. Every single one of them had the same thick silver sticker, donated by the Larkwell Education Foundation. I used a letter opener to scrape at the sticker on the third tablet. It was stubborn, the adhesive industrial strength, but it gave way. Underneath, the plastic was scratched and discolored. I saw the faint outline of a previous asset tag. Property of Apex Call Center Solutions, 2017. I checked the next one. North State Correctional Facility, Education Wing. I felt sick. They weren't just old. Some of them were prison surplus. I turned one on. The battery was dead. I plugged it into a wall charger I found on the shelf. It took 5 minutes to boot up. When the screen finally flickered to life, it didn't show the district's login portal. It showed a generic Android recovery screen. The operating system was 5 versions behind. It wouldn't even support the secure browser we used for state testing. These weren't tools. They were props. They were useless slabs of glass and plastic meant to look good in a photo. I took pictures. I photographed the prison tag. I photographed the call center tag. I photographed the software version screen. I heard footsteps in the hall. I froze. I quickly shoved the tablets back into the box and retaped the top. I switched off the light and stood in the darkness, my heart hammering against my ribs. The footsteps slowed outside the door. I saw the shadow of feet under the frame. Then, they moved on. I waited 5 full minutes before I dared to leave. That night, I met Ben Miller at a diner on the edge of town. Ben was a journalist for the Maple Hollow Gazette, or at least he used to be a real journalist. Now he mostly wrote puff pieces about the high school football team and the annual pumpkin festival. I slid into the booth across from him. He looked tired, his shirt wrinkled. "You said you had a scoop." "Eva," he said, stirring his black coffee. "I hope it is about the bake sale, because I really do not have the energy for a scandal. It is not a bake sale." "Ben," I said. I slid my phone across the table, showing him the photo of the prison tag on the tablet. The Larkwell Foundation is dumping electronic waste on the school and claiming it as high-value technology, and the district is helping them cover it up. Ben looked at the photo. He squinted. Then he pushed the phone back to me. "I cannot run this. Eva." "What?" I stared at him. "It is fraud." "Ben, it is stealing from the taxpayers." He sighed and rubbed his face. "Eva, look at the back page of the Gazette. Look at who buys the full-page ad every Sunday. Larkwell Education Foundation, investing in our future. They keep the lights on at the paper. If I run a story accusing them of fraud, the publisher kills it, and I am out of a job. But you are a reporter," I argued. "You are supposed to tell the truth." "I am a reporter in a one-horse town where the horse owns the printing press." He said, "The foundation controls access. If I go after them, the superintendent bans me from school board meetings. The mayor stops taking my calls. I become a pariah." He leaned in. "You need to drop this. You are a teacher. You have a pension. You have a nice life. Why do you want to blow it up?" "Because my students are using tablets that belong to inmates." "Ben, because a lighting rig almost killed a kid." He looked away, shame flickering in his eyes. "I am sorry. Eva, I really am. But unless you have a smoking gun that the national boys would care about, nobody in this town is going to print a word against Richard Kelly's friends." I drove home feeling a sense of isolation so profound it was physical. My parents were against me. The administration was against me. The media was compromised. I was alone. The performance night, rescheduled and rebranded as the Maple Hollow Resilience Gala, arrived on Thursday. The district had gone into overdrive to spin the narrative. The gymnasium was decked out in gold and maroon streamers. A new, smaller lighting system had been rented, probably at triple the cost, to replace the broken truss. The air was thick with perfume and desperation. The superintendent, a smooth-talking man named Dr. Vance, was working the room, shaking hands with donors. My father was there, of course. I saw him near the refreshments, laughing with the mayor. He looked effortless. He looked like a man with nothing to hide. I was backstage again, corralling the students. The mood was different this time. The kids were nervous. They knew what had happened on Monday. They eyed the ceiling suspiciously. Ms. Kelly? I turned. It was Jason, one of my brightest students. He was holding a piece of paper, his hands trembling. They gave me a new speech. He said, "What?" I took the paper from him. It was typed. Script for student speaker. I read the first paragraph. I want to thank the Larkwell Foundation for saving our school. When the accident happened, I was scared. But then I remembered that we have guardian angels watching over us. The new technology you gave us has changed my life. I felt a surge of rage so hot it almost blinded me. "Jason," I said, kneeling down to look him in the eye. "Who gave you this?" "The lady with the headset," he said, pointing to a woman in a sharp blazer standing near the curtain. She said, "I have to say it exactly like this, but—" "Ms. Kelly, I haven't even used the new tablet yet. Mine doesn't turn on." I crumpled the paper in my hand. "You do not have to say this. Jason." But she said, I stood up. I smoothed out my dress. "Come with me." I walked Jason to the wing of the stage. The event was starting. The local news crew, invited by the district, was setting up their tripod in the front row. They wanted a heartwarming segment. They wanted a clip of a grateful child crying tears of joy for the benevolence of the donors. Doctor. Vance took the microphone at the podium. "Good evening. Maple Hollow," he boomed. "We are here tonight to celebrate resilience, to celebrate the partnership between our schools and our community leaders. And to kick things off, we have a special student who wants to share a few words about what this support means to him. Please welcome Jason Miller." The applause was polite, restrained. The woman with the headset pushed Jason forward. "Go," she hissed. I stepped out with him. The woman grabbed my arm. "What are you doing?" "He goes out alone. He is 12, I said, pulling my arm free. "And he is nervous. I am going with him." I walked Jason to the center of the stage. The lights were blinding. I could see the camera lens focused on us, the red tally light glowing. Jason stood at the microphone. He looked terrifyingly small. He looked at the crumpled paper in my hand, then out at the audience. "Doctor." Vance looked confused. He took a half step toward us. "Jason?" "Doctor," Vance said, his smile tight. "Go ahead, son." Jason froze. The silence stretched. I put a hand on his shoulder. I leaned into the mic, my voice steady. "Jason doesn't need a script," I said. The sound amplified through the gym, crisp and clear. A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. I saw the PR woman backstage frantically waving her hands, making a cut-it motion. I looked at the camera. I looked right down the lens. "We teach our students to speak the truth," I continued. "Not to recite lines written by adults who want to sell a story. Jason, just tell them how you feel about your class." Jason looked up at me, then at the microphone. "I like history." He stammered. "Doctor." Vance tried to intervene. He reached for the mic. "Thank you, Jason. That is wonderful." I blocked him with my body. It was subtle, but firm. I held the space. "Go on." "Jason," I said. Jason gained a little confidence. "I like history because Ms. Kelly makes it interesting, but—" He hesitated. "But what?" I encouraged him. "But it is hard to do the research," he said, his voice gaining volume, "because the Wi-Fi is always broken, and the new tablets don't work." The room went dead silent. "Doctor." Vance's smile didn't just tighten. It turned into a rictus of panic. "What?" Jason said, looking innocent. "They don't— Mine freezes every time I touch it. It has a sticker from a prison on the back." The gasp from the audience was audible. The cameraman zoomed in. He didn't cut away. He zoomed in. Doctor. Vance grabbed the microphone stand. Okay, let's give it up for Jason. Technical difficulties. Kids say the darndest things. He practically shoved us away from the podium. As we walked off stage, the curtain area was in chaos. The PR woman was screaming into her headset. My father was standing near the exit, his face a mask of cold fury. I walked Jason back to the other students. You did great. I told him. You told the truth. I felt a hand on my elbow. It was Frank, the facilities manager. He looked like he was about to vomit. He pulled me into the shadow of a scenery flat. Ms. Kelly, he whispered. Frank, I cannot talk right now. You were right, he said. Tears were welling in his eyes. About the rig. I stopped. What? They told me to skip the load test. He choked out. Mr. Sterling from the foundation board. He came by on Monday morning. He said the safety cables were ugly. He said they ruined the aesthetic of the lighting design. He told me to take the backups off. He told you to remove the safety measures? I asked, my voice rising. He said he would fire me if I didn't. Frank sobbed quietly. He said the foundation pays my salary supplement. Ms. Kelly, I didn't think it would fall. I just thought, Ava! The voice boomed from the hallway. It was Dr. Vance. I looked at Frank. Go home. Frank, write it down. Write everything down. I stepped out of the shadows to face the superintendent, but he wasn't alone. My father was with him. Get her out of here, my father said. He didn't look at me. He looked at Vance. Get her off the property before she says another word. You are on administrative leave. Ms. Kelly, Vance spat. Insubordination. Disrupting a district event. I looked at them both. I looked at the PR woman who was glaring at me with hatred. I walked past them. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I walked out the back door into the cool night air. My phone started buzzing before I even reached my car. I ignored it until I got home. I poured myself a glass of water and sat on my couch, my hands shaking. I opened social media. The clip was everywhere. It wasn't the official news segment. It was a cell phone video recorded by a parent in the front row. The caption read, Teacher shuts down scripted PR stunt. Kid exposes prison tablets. I watched myself on the small screen. I looked calm. I looked fierce. I blocked the superintendent with the grace of a linebacker and the dignity of a queen. And then Jason's voice, clear as a bell. It has a sticker from a prison on the back. The views were climbing. 10,000, 50,000. Comments were pouring in. Finally, a teacher with a spine. Is this Maple Hollow? My kid goes there. Prison tablets? WTH? My phone rang again. It wasn't a number I recognized. It was the landline from my parents' house. I stared at it. I picked it up. Hello? Eva. My father's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried more violence than a scream. Dad. Shut up, he said. I heard him breathing, sharp, controlled inhales. You think you are a hero? He asked. You think you just won something? I stood up for my student. Dad, I stood up for the truth. You stood up for nothing. You embarrassed the superintendent. You embarrassed the donors. You embarrassed me. He paused. Do you have any idea what you just stepped into? Do you have any conception of the machinery you just threw a wrench into? This isn't a game. Eva, this isn't one of your little history lessons. The tablets are from a prison. Dad, I shouted, my control finally snapping, and the rig fell because your friend wanted the stage to look pretty. Silence. Then, his voice dropped an octave. Cold, deadly. Fix it. Eva. What? You go to Vance tomorrow. You issue a public apology. You say you were stressed. You say the kid was confused. You kill this story. And if I don't? He laughed. It wasn't the rich chuckle from the study. It was a dry, dead sound. Then you are not my daughter. You are just a liability, and I deal with liabilities. The line went dead. I sat there in the silence of my apartment. The video on my phone looped again. It has a sticker from a prison on the back. I looked at the black screen of my phone. Fix it. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the streetlights of Maple Hollow. I wasn't going to fix it. I was going to break it wide open. The silence in my apartment was deceptive. Outside, my phone was vibrating across the coffee table every 30 seconds, a relentless buzzing reminder that I was no longer just Eva Kelly. 8th grade teacher, I was a hashtag, I was a headline. I picked up the phone, intending to turn it off, but the caller ID stopped me. It wasn't a local number. It was a 212 area code, New York City. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, an email landed in my inbox with a subject line that made my breath hitch. Invitation. The Sterling Report. The Sterling Report was the most watched nightly news program in the country. It was the show my father watched every evening at 6:30. Sipping his scotch, nodding along to the serious analysis of global markets and political scandals. And now, a producer named Jessica Thorne wanted me on the air to discuss educational integrity and the influence of private donors in public schools. I stared at the screen. This wasn't local news anymore. This was the national stage. Before I could process the implication, my landline rang. It was the school district office. Ms. Kelly? The voice was sharp, clipped. It was the district legal counsel, a man named Arthur Pimes, who always looked like he was smelling something sour. Mr. Pimes, I said, keeping my voice steady. We understand you have been contacted by national media outlets, he said. He didn't ask. He stated it. I have, I replied. You are currently on administrative leave. Ms. Kelly. I am calling to remind you that under your contract, specifically Article 4, Section 2, you are prohibited from discussing confidential district operations, student records, or internal personnel matters with the press. If you accept any interviews, we will consider it a breach of contract and immediate grounds for termination, as well as a potential civil suit for defamation. He paused, letting the threat hang there like a guillotine blade. We strongly advise you to decline. Eva, for your own future. I hung up without saying goodbye. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a sudden, clarifying anger. They weren't worried about student privacy. They were terrified. A knock at my door made me jump. I moved to the peephole, expecting a reporter. It was Mr. Henderson, my principal. He looked terrible. His tie was loose, his eyes red-rimmed behind his glasses. He held a cardboard box in his hands. I opened the door. George? I said. He walked in past me, placing the box on my kitchen counter. It was filled with grading I had left behind, essays on the Great Gatsby that I hadn't finished marking. I brought you these, he said, his voice low. I thought you might want to keep your mind occupied. Thank you, I said. He didn't leave. He stood in my small kitchen, wringing his hands. Eva, he said, looking at the floor. You need to be careful. I know. Pimes just called me. It is not just Pimes. It is Vance, Doctor. Vance, the superintendent. George looked up, his face pale. He is building a file. Eva, I was in his office this morning. He had his secretary pulling everything from the last 8 years. Every time you were 5 minutes late to a faculty meeting. Every time a parent complained about a grade. Every sick day you took on a Friday. He swallowed hard. He is looking for a pattern. He wants to frame this as a long-standing behavioral issue. He wants to paint you as disgruntled and unstable, so that when he fires you, it looks like cause, not retaliation. I leaned against the counter. They are going to destroy my career because I protected a student. George nodded miserably. They are scared. Eva, I have never seen Vance sweat like this. The foundation called him 3 times while I was in the office. They are demanding he shuts you down. Why, George? I asked. It is just some old tablets. Why is the reaction so nuclear? He shook his head. I do not know. But whatever it is not just about the tablets. It is deep. And if you go on that TV show... He trailed off. If I go on TV, he will revoke your license. Eva, he will make sure you never teach in this state again. George walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the knob. I shouldn't be here, he whispered. If they knew I warned you, I would be next. He slipped out, leaving me alone with my essays and the knowledge that the career I loved was being held hostage. 2 hours later, another knock. This time, I knew who it was before I opened it. I could smell the basil and garlic through the wood. Mom. She stood in the hallway holding a large ceramic dish covered in foil. She was wearing her casual pearls, the ones she wore when she wanted to appear approachable, but still superior to everyone else in the grocery store. I made lasagna, she said, offering a tight, fragile smile. Your favorite. I hadn't eaten lasagna since I was 16, but I stepped back to let her in. Hello, Mom. She bustled into the kitchen, setting the dish down and immediately starting to tidy up the stack of mail on my counter. It is chaos out there. Ava, she said, her voice bright and brittle. There are vans parked down the street. News vans. In our neighborhood. Can you imagine? She turned to look at me. Her eyes were pleading. Your father is beside himself. I crossed my arms. Is he? Or is he just worried about his golf game? Ava, please. She abandoned the cleaning and walked over to me, reaching out to touch my arm. Her hands were cold. You have to stop this. You have to issue a statement and make it go away. Why? I asked. Why is everyone so desperate for me to lie? Because we are a family, she cried out, her voice cracking. Because we have a standing in this town. Your father has spent 40 years building a reputation. He is a respected man, and you are tearing him down on national television over what? Some broken computers? It is fraud. Mom, I said quietly. She shook her head violently. It is business. That is how the world works. Ava, you help people. They help you. The foundation does so much good. The scholarship fund? The new stadium? Why do you have to pick at the scabs? She gripped my arm harder. If you go on that show tonight, if you embarrass him again, I do not know if he can take it. His heart. Ava, you know his blood pressure is high. I looked at her. I saw the fear in her eyes. It wasn't just social embarrassment. It was terror. She was terrified of the house of cards falling. She knew, on some level, that the luxury she lived in was built on something rotten, and she had spent a lifetime refusing to look down. I am not doing this to hurt you. Mom, then stop, she begged. Just stop. Take the deal. Resign quietly. Dad said he could set you up in a consultancy role at one of his friends' firms. You would make double what you make now. Just come back to the fold. She was trying to buy me. My own mother was trying to bribe me into silence with a job I didn't want. Paid for by the same men who were robbing my school. I gently removed her hand from my arm. I cannot do that, Mom. She stared at me for a long moment. The warmth vanished from her face. The mask slid back into place. She straightened her cardigan. Well, she said, her voice cold, I hope it is worth it. Being right, I hope it keeps you warm at night when you have lost everything else. She left the lasagna on the counter and walked out. I threw it in the trash without uncovering it. I sat down at my laptop. I wasn't going to quit. I was going to dig. I pulled up the public records for the Larkwell Education Foundation. Most of it was standard boilerplate, mission statements about empowering youth and bridging the gap. I found the board of directors list. Richard Kelly, treasurer, I knew that. James Sterling, chairman. I knew him, too. He was the man who had ordered the safety cables removed. I scanned the rest of the names. They were a who's who of Maple Hollow's elite. But one name caught my eye, Gavin Price. Gavin Price owned Price Construction, the company that had won the bid to renovate the school library last year, and the bid to repave the parking lots, and the bid to build the new stadium entrance. I opened a new tab and searched for the district's vendor contracts. Price Construction had been awarded $4 million in contracts over the last 3 years. Every single one was marked as a sole source award, meaning there had been no competitive bidding process because the district claimed Price was the only vendor capable of meeting the timeline. I went back to the foundation list. Gavin Price sat on the board that donated money to the school. The school then hired Gavin Price's company with no competition. It was a wash. The foundation donated money for a tax write-off. The district took the money and handed it right back to the donor in the form of a construction contract. My phone buzzed. A text message from a number I didn't know. Meet me at the Daily Grind. Back patio. 30 minutes. Leave your phone in the car. Martha. Martha Higgins used to be the lead accountant for the school district. She had resigned suddenly 6 months ago. The rumor was she had moved to Florida to take care of her sick mother. I grabbed my keys. The Daily Grind was a coffee shop near the university, far enough from the wealthy suburbs that I was unlikely to run into my parents' friends. I left my phone in the glove box as instructed and walked around to the back patio. It was empty, save for a woman sitting in the far corner wearing a large sun hat and sunglasses. Despite the overcast sky, I sat down opposite her. "Hello, Martha," I said. She didn't take off the sunglasses. "You are making a lot of noise." "Eva, I am trying to find the truth." She laughed. A bitter sound. "The truth is expensive." She pushed a paper coffee cup toward me. It was empty. She flipped it over. Written on the inside of the cardboard sleeve were numbers. I leaned in. "What is this?" "It is the formula," she said. Her voice barely a whisper. "I couldn't take the files. They wipe the drives every week. But I remember the math." She tapped the cup. "The foundation donates $100,000 for technology. The district accepts it, but the money is restricted. It can only be used with approved vendors." "Who approves the vendors?" I asked. "The foundation," she said. "So, the district takes the $100,000, she continued, and they pay an invoice to a company called Apex Solutions for consulting and procurement. Apex is owned by a holding company in Delaware. And who owns the holding company?" Martha lowered her sunglasses just enough for me to see her eyes. They were terrified. I tracked the EIN number before I left. The holding company has 3 signatories: James Sterling, Gavin Price, and your father. I felt the air leave my lungs. My father. It is a loop. Eva, a washing machine. They donate the money, get the charitable tax deduction for their personal businesses, and then the district pays their shell company for services that are never really delivered. The money goes in a circle and ends up right back in their pockets, cleaned and legitimized. The school gets the garbage, the broken tablets, the cheap repairs, because the real money was never meant for the kids. It was just passing through. "How long?" I asked. 10 years, she said. "Maybe longer. Millions of dollars." "Eva, why did you leave?" "Because Vance told me to adjust the ledgers, to categorize the Apex payments as instructional materials instead of consulting, so the state auditors wouldn't flag the ratio. I refused. He told me my pension was at risk. I quit the next day." She put her sunglasses back up. "You cannot use my name. Eva, I will deny we ever met. I have grandchildren. I cannot fight these people." She stood up. "But if you go on that show tonight, ask them about the Larkwell Gala 3 years ago. Ask them where the miracle grant actually went." She walked away, leaving me with the empty coffee cup and a revelation that shattered the last remnant of my childhood. My father wasn't just protecting his friends. He was a thief. He was stealing from the very children he mocked me for teaching. He sat at that dinner table, eating roast chicken, judging my lowly career, while his bank account grew fat on the funds that should have bought books for my students. I drove to the train station. I didn't go home. I didn't pack a bag. I just got on the train to New York City. I texted Jessica Thorne, the producer, "I'm coming." The studio in Manhattan was a fortress of glass and steel. I was ushered through security, past makeup rooms where famous faces were being powdered, and into a small green room. Jessica Thorne walked in. She was younger than I expected, sharp and energetic. "You made it," she said. "I wasn't sure you would showing up. Your district sent a cease and desist letter an hour ago." "I bet they did," I said. She sat down and opened a folder. "We have been digging since your clip went viral. Eva, we have sources. We have a whistleblower who sent us documents about the foundation's tax filings. It matches what you're saying. The numbers don't add up. She looked at me seriously. But we need a face. Documents are boring. Viewers need a human being to tell them why this matters. We need you to speak plainly. Can you do that? I thought about Jason standing on that stage, terrified but brave. I thought of the prison sticker. I thought of my father's laugh. Yes, I said, I can do that. We were live in 3 minutes. I sat in the chair opposite Sarah Jenkins, the anchor. She was a legend in the industry, known for being tough but fair. The lights came up. The red tally light blinked on. Tonight on the Sterling Report, a small-town teacher takes on a powerful political machine. Is it charity, or is it a cover-up? Sarah turned to me. Eva Kelly, thanks for being here. You have been placed on leave for what the district calls disruption. What exactly did you disrupt? I looked into the camera. I imagined my father sitting in his study, the scotch in his hand. I disrupted a lie. I said, my voice was calm. I was surprised by how steady I felt. For years, our town has been told that we should be grateful for the charity of wealthy donors. We were told that if we just smiled and accepted the scraps, we should be happy. But last week, a student of mine was handed a tablet that was discarded by a prison, and when he tried to say it didn't work, an adult tried to silence him. I paused. I am a teacher. My job is to teach children to ask questions, to seek the truth. I cannot do that if I am part of a system that punishes them for honesty. Sarah leaned in. The district claims these are just logistical errors, isolated incidents. They are not errors, I said. When a lighting rig falls because safety protocols were skipped to save money for aesthetics, that is not an error. That is a choice. When contracts are awarded to board members without bidding, that is a choice. I took a breath. I am not accusing anyone without a court of law. But I have seen the inventory. I have seen the fear in the eyes of the staff. The Larkwell Foundation is using our school as a backdrop for their own public relations. And our students are the props. And the money? The money seems to disappear before it ever reaches the classroom. Sarah nodded. She looked at her notes. We reached out to the foundation for comment. They declined. But we have obtained financial records that raise serious questions about where the donations are going. She looked back at the camera. We will be continuing this investigation. Specifically, looking into the vendors receiving these funds. The segment ended. I walked off the set. I felt lightheaded. I had done it. I had crossed the Rubicon, back in Maple Hollow, in the study that smelled of lemon polish and old money. Richard Kelly sat in his leather chair. The television was muted now, but the image of his daughter's face was still burned into his retinas. He was not angry. Anger was a hot emotion, a reaction to an insult. He was cold. He was frozen. His hand gripped the glass of scotch so hard his knuckles were white. She hadn't just embarrassed him. She hadn't just exposed the tablets. She had mentioned the contracts. She had mentioned the safety protocols. But it was the last thing the anchor had said. We are looking into the vendors. Richard looked at the phone on his desk. It was already ringing. He knew who it was. It was Sterling, or Price. He didn't answer. He stared at the black screen of the television. His daughter didn't know the whole truth. She thought it was just graft. She thought it was just skimming off the top. She didn't know about the gala 3 years ago. She didn't know about the federal grant money that had been commingled with the private donations to hide the deficit. She didn't know that if the feds looked at Apex Solutions, they wouldn't just find tax evasion. They would find wire fraud. They would find money laundering for entities that had nothing to do with education. He had thought she was playing in the dirt. He had thought she was a lowly teacher, but she had just lit a fuse that led directly to a bomb sitting under the foundation of his entire life. He felt a pain in his chest, a tight, squeezing pressure. You stupid girl, he whispered to the empty room. You have no idea what you have done. The notification arrived at 6 a.m, buzzing on my nightstand like an angry insect. It was a generic alert from the district's human resources portal. But the attached letter was signed personally by Dr. Vance. Dear Ms. Kelly, effective immediately. You are placed on administrative leave pending a formal review of your conduct regarding unauthorized media engagement. You are prohibited from entering school property or contacting students. Your access to district servers has been suspended. I stared at the screen, the blue light stinging my tired eyes. Unauthorized media engagement. I laughed, a dry, sharp sound in the quiet of my bedroom. 2 months ago, the high school football coach had appeared in a series of television commercials for a local car dealership, wearing his district-issued whistle and polo shirt, encouraging people to tackle high prices. He had received a commendation for community outreach, but I wasn't selling trucks. I was selling the truth. And apparently, that was a violation of policy. I tried to log into my email to forward the letter to my personal account. Access denied. User account disabled. They had moved fast. They had cut the digital cord before the sun was even up. It was a tactical isolation, designed to make me feel small, powerless, and severed from the community I had served for 8 years. But the isolation didn't last long. By 8 o'clock, the internet had woken up. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee, scrolling through the fallout from the Sterling Report interview. The support was overwhelming. A tidal wave of validation that made my chest ache. Thousands of strangers were sharing the clip, using hashtags like #StandWithEva and Teach the Truth. Former students, kids I hadn't seen in 5 years, were posting stories about how I had helped them, verifying my character. But beneath the support, something darker was moving. It started on the local community Facebook pages, the digital town squares of Maple Hollow. She is just looking for a book deal. One comment read, "Why hurt our property values just to get famous?" I heard she was already on probation for shouting at a principal. Another said, "A lie, a complete fabrication. This woman is anti-community. She hates Maple Hollow. If she doesn't like it here, she should leave." The phrasing was specific. Anti-community, attention-seeking, disgruntled. It wasn't random. The comments appeared in clusters, posted by accounts with generic profile pictures, flags, eagles, landscapes, that had been created recently. It was a slick, coordinated campaign. Someone had hired a firm to manage the narrative, to paint me not as a whistleblower, but as a traitor who was attacking the town itself. I put the phone down. My hands were shaking. It is one thing to fight an administration. It is another to watch your neighbors be weaponized against you. My doorbell rang at 10. I flinched. I wasn't expecting anyone. I crept to the peephole. It was Sarah Jenkins. Not the news anchor, but the Sarah Jenkins who ran the PTA Logistics Committee. She was a quiet woman, the kind who spent hours folding programs and organizing bake sales without ever asking for credit. She looked nervous, clutching her purse to her chest. I opened the door. "Sarah? I cannot stay," she said, glancing over her shoulder at the street. "I told my husband I was going to the grocery store." "Come in," I said, stepping back. She stepped into my living room but didn't sit down. She stood by the coat rack, her fingers twisting the strap of her bag. I saw the interview. "Ava," she said softly, "and I saw what they are saying about you online, that you are lying." She looked up, her eyes watery. "You are not lying, I know." I said, "But thank you for saying it." "No, Ava, you do not understand. I handled the intake for the gala last year, and the year before." She unzipped her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. It was folded in half, crumpled, as if she had been carrying it around for days, terrified to show it to anyone. The foundation insisted on handling the receiving paperwork. She said, her voice trembling, "Usually, when we get donations, books, supplies, sports gear, the PTA signs for it, we verify the value, but with the Larkwell shipments, Mr. Sterling sent his own people. Sterling, the chairman. What did they do?" I asked, taking the envelope. "They brought us forms," Sarah whispered. "They made the custodial staff sign them. I saw Frank sign one. They told him it was just a formality for the insurance." I opened the envelope. Inside were photocopies of donation receipts. Item: assorted technology assets. Valuation: $100,000. Beneath that, a second sheet, a packing list from the actual delivery truck. which Sarah must have snagged from the trash or copied when no one was looking. Contents: refurbished electronics, bulk rate, valuation, $12,000. They inflated the value by nearly 10 times, I said, the math hitting me like a physical blow. They claim the tax deduction for the high amount, Sarah said, and the district puts the high amount on the books as an asset. It boosts the superintendent's funding metrics. Everyone looks good, but the kids get junk. She looked at me, terrified. They pressured us. Eva, Mr. Sterling told me once that if I made the paperwork difficult, the foundation would pull the funding for the art program. My daughter loves art. I just signed where they told me to. She started to cry. I am so sorry. I was a coward. I reached out and took her hand. You are not a coward. Sarah, you are here now. You can keep those, she said, pointing to the papers. But I cannot testify. My husband works for Price Construction. If I speak up... She didn't have to finish the sentence. If she spoke up, her husband would lose his job. The web was so tight, so sticky, that everyone in town was caught in it. Go, I said gently. You have done enough. Thank you. After she left, I sat with the papers. This was proof of tax fraud. This was proof of a conspiracy. But it was just paper. I needed the people behind it. I needed to talk to the one person who I knew was crumbling. I drove to my parents' house at noon. My father's car was in the driveway, which was unusual for a Wednesday. He should have been at the firm. I let myself in. The house was silent, but it felt different today. The air usually smelled of lemon and order. Today, it felt stagnant. I found my mother in the sunroom. She wasn't reading or gardening. She was sitting in a wicker chair, staring out at the manicured lawn, a glass of white wine in her hand. It was barely noon. Mom? She didn't jump. She turned her head slowly. Her eyes were red, her makeup smudged. She looked 10 years older than she had 2 days ago. Eva, she said. Her voice was thick. I sat down on the ottoman across from her. I saw the comments. Mom. I know Dad's friends are behind it. She took a sip of wine. Her hand shook so badly the liquid sloshed over the rim. He is ruining us, isn't he? She asked. Who? Your father. Or you? I do not know anymore. She looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't see the critical, status-obsessed matriarch. I saw a frightened woman who had been holding her breath for a very long time. Mom, what is happening? Why is he so terrified of a few questions about tablets? She let out a long, shuddering sigh. It is not the tablets. Eva, it is everything. She set the glass down. Do you remember when you were in college? Junior year? I nodded. That was 2013. We almost lost the house. She said quietly. I stared at her. What? Your father made some bad calls. Risky investments. He leveraged everything. The firm was going under. We were months away from bankruptcy, real bankruptcy. Eva, losing the cars, the club membership, this house. She looked around the room, at the expensive furniture, the silk drapes. He was desperate. He couldn't bear the thought of being poor, of being ordinary. So what did he do? I asked, dread coiling in my stomach. He went to James Sterling. She said, James was starting the foundation then. He needed a board member with a financial background to give it legitimacy, someone who knew how to structure complex accounts. She looked at me. James bailed us out. Eva. He wrote a personal check that cleared the debts. But it wasn't a gift. It was a purchase. He bought your father's loyalty. He bought his silence. I felt cold. My entire adult life, the tuition, the weddings, the vacations, it was all funded by a pact with the devil. Dad has been laundering money for them since 2013, I whispered. To pay back a debt? He calls it creative accounting, she said bitterly. He says he is protecting the family. He says he did it for you, so you wouldn't have to leave school. She covered her face with her hands. But now, if this comes out, he won't just lose the house. Eva, He will go to prison. The word hung in the sunlit room. Prison. I heard the front door open. Heavy footsteps on the hardwood. My father appeared in the doorway of the sunroom. He was wearing his golf clothes, but he looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His face was gray. "I told you not to come here," he said. I stood up. "I know about the debt." "Dad," he looked at my mother. She refused to meet his eyes, staring down at her lap. He didn't yell. He didn't deny it. He just deflated, leaning against the doorframe like a man whose structural integrity had finally given way. "Eleanor, you talk too much," he muttered. He walked over to the sidebar and poured himself a drink. It was noon, and my parents were both drinking to numb the reality I had brought into their home. I walked over to him. "Is it true? You took money from Sterling to fix your mistakes, and you paid him back by helping him steal from my school?" He spun around, his eyes flashing with a sudden, desperate anger. "I didn't steal. I facilitated." "There is a difference." "There is no difference," I shouted. "Those kids have nothing. Dad, and you have this." I gestured to the room. "I did what I had to do," he roared. "You think this life is free? You think you got to go to that private university on a teacher's salary? I carried this family. I made the hard choices so you could play moral crusader in your little classroom." He jabbed a finger at my chest. "Sterling helped us when no one else would. And yes, the foundation takes a cut. Yes, the contracts go to friends. That is how the world works. Ava, it is who you know. It is leverage." He lowered his voice, trembling with intensity. "And the schools still get the money, don't they? Maybe not all of it. Maybe the tablets are used, but they are better than nothing. I made sure money flowed into that district when the state cut the budget. I am the hero of this story, not the villain." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had raised me to believe I was lowly. "You are not a hero." "Dad," I said, my voice shaking, "you are a fence. You are a bagman for a crook." He flinched as if I had slapped him. "Get out," he whispered. "I am going to the authorities. Dad, I have the receipts. I have the timeline. If you do that," he hissed, leaning in close, his breath smelling of scotch and fear, "you destroy everything. Your mother, me, your own name. You think they will hire a whistleblower? You will be toxic. I would rather be toxic than corrupt," I said. I turned and walked out. I didn't look back at my mother. I couldn't bear to see her sitting there, drinking her wine, watching the ship go down. I got into my car. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was an email notification. From Richard Kelly. Subject, F.do. Re-strategy. Urgent. My heart stopped. He must have been trying to forward something to his lawyer or Sterling while I was yelling at him. His hands were shaking. He had hit Eva instead of Evan. His attorney. I opened it. It was a chain between my father, James Sterling, and Dr. Vance. Sterling. "The girl is a problem. The TV spot was damaging. We need to kill the credibility." Vance. "I have put her on leave. We are withdrawing her curriculum application today. I can frame it as a voluntary withdrawal due to stress. That fits the unstable narrative." Richard. "Do it. Neutralize the teacher narrative. Make her look like she is cracking under pressure. We spin the resignation as a mental health crisis. We need this handled before the gala audit comes up. Neutralize the teacher narrative." He had typed that. My father, the man who taught me to ride a bike. He was plotting with the superintendent to gaslight me into a mental breakdown to save his own skin. I forwarded the email to my Proton account. Then I screenshot it. Then I printed it at the portable printer I kept in my trunk for grading papers. I had the smoking gun, but I needed someone who knew how to fire it. I drove straight to the office of Alan Gold. Alan was not a family friend. He was the kind of lawyer my father hated. A labor attorney who specialized in wrongful termination and whistleblower cases. His office was in a strip mall next to a dry cleaner, not a glass tower. I walked in without an appointment. I slammed the printout of the email on his receptionist's desk. "I need to see Mr. Gold," I said. Now, Alan Gold was a short, balding man with coffee stains on his tie and eyes that missed nothing. He read the email 3 times. He read the inventory receipts Sarah had given me. He listened to my recording of the prison tablet speech. He leaned back in his squeaky chair and whistled. "Ms. Kelly," he said, "you have walked into a buzzsaw. Can we win?" I asked. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Legally? Yes. This is conspiracy, fraud, retaliation, and probably RICO violations if we dig deep enough. But winning in court takes years. They have deep pockets. They will bury you in motions. They will depose your ex-boyfriends. They will audit your trash." He tapped the email. "This proves intent to retaliate. That is good, but they are smart." He looked at me. "Here is what is going to happen next. They are going to try to get you to quit. If you resign, you lose your standing. You lose your whistleblower protection. You become just a bitter ex-employee. They already withdrew my job application." I said, "Exactly." He said, "They are removing your future to make you desperate." He leaned forward. "Ava, you need a clean timeline. No more emotional outbursts. No more shouting matches with your dad. Everything in writing. If they call you, you do not answer. You direct them to me." He paused. "But there is a risk. If you go public with this email, if you expose your father, there is no going back. You are not just suing a district. You are sending your father to federal prison. Are you ready for that?" I thought about the sunroom. I thought about the favor that bought our lives. He made his choice. I said, "I am making mine." When I got home, the sun was setting. The sky was a bruised purple, matching the feeling in my chest. I checked my personal email. There was a notification from the district HR system, an automated one this time. Update on application, Director of Curriculum and Instruction. Status, withdrawn by applicant. I stared at it. I hadn't withdrawn it. They had logged in, impersonated me, or used administrative override to kill the application. They were erasing my ambition. They were trying to make it look like I had given up. My phone rang. It was Jessica Thorne, the producer from the Sterling Report. "Eva," she said, her voice fast and excited. "The segment last night. The ratings were insane. People are furious. We are getting calls from other teachers in your district, off the record, confirming the inventory issues." "That is good," I said dully. "It is better than good. It is a movement. Listen, we want to do a follow-up, a live panel, tomorrow night. We want to put you on with an education policy expert and, wait for it. We invited Dr. Vance. Vance won't come." I said, "He might." She said, "He is arrogant, and he is desperate to control the spin. If he declines, we leave an empty chair. If he comes, you get to confront him live." I hesitated. Alan Gold's voice echoed in my head. "They will frame it as insubordination. If I went on TV again, while on administrative leave, I was handing them the justification to fire me. I would be breaking the order directly. But if I stayed silent, if I let them neutralize the narrative, then the lie would win. They would say I resigned. They would say I was unstable. I will let you know in an hour." I told Jessica. I hung up. I sat on my floor, surrounded by the papers, the fake receipts, the email, the prison tablet photos. I was afraid. I was terrified of losing my license. I was terrified of the finality of destroying my family. My phone buzzed again. No caller ID. I almost didn't answer. I thought it might be a reporter or another one of my father's threats. I picked it up. "Hello?" There was silence on the other end. Then, a voice. It was distorted, digital, but the cadence was male. "You are close." "Eva." "Who is this?" I asked, gripping the phone. "You are looking at the tablets. You are looking at the contracts. That is the small stuff." The voice paused. "Ask what happened at the Larkwell Gala 3 years ago." "What?" I asked. "What happened?" "The miracle," the voice said. "Ask about the miracle that never happened." Click, the line went dead. I sat there, the phone pressed to my ear, the dial tone humming, the Larkwell Gala. 3 years ago, I remembered it vaguely. My parents had dressed up. My father had received an award. Community Pillar of the Year. There had been a headline in the paper. Foundation announces historic gift. I scrambled to my laptop. I searched the archives of the Maple Hollow Gazette. November 12, 2023. Larkwell Gala raises record funds. Chairman James Sterling announces a $5 million miracle grant for a new STEM wing at the high school. $5 million. I sat back. There was no STEM wing at the high school. There wasn't even a blueprint for one. I realized then that the voice was right. I had been looking at the breadcrumbs, the tablets, the lighting rig. I had missed the entire loaf. $5 million announced. $5 million vanished. And my father was the treasurer. I picked up my phone and texted Jessica Thorne. I'll do it. I wasn't just a teacher anymore. I was the only thing standing between the truth and a $5 million lie. And I was done being afraid. I sat in the glow of my laptop screen, watching a ghost of my father from 3 years ago. The video file was from the Maple Hollow Gazette archives. The timestamp read, November 12th, 2023. It was the night of the Larkwell Gala. On screen, my father stood on a stage draped in velvet. He looked younger, or perhaps just lighter, unburdened by the secrets he was currently carrying. He was holding a microphone in one hand and a glass of champagne in the other. Beside him stood James Sterling, the foundation chairman, and Dr. Vance, the superintendent. This is not just a donation, my father's voice boomed through my computer speakers. Rich with false humility, this is a promise that the children of Maple Hollow will have the finest facilities in the state. Tonight, I am proud to pledge, on behalf of the Kelly family and our partners, $500,000 toward the new STEM wing. The crowd erupted. I saw my mother in the front row, clapping so hard her bracelets caught the light. I saw Gavin Price, the contractor, nodding approvingly. I paused the video. $500,000. I opened my bank app. I looked at the shared family trust I had access to as an executor in training, a title my father had given me years ago to make me feel involved. The balance was steady. There had never been a withdrawal of $500,000 in 2023. There hadn't been a withdrawal of $50,000. I picked up my phone and dialed the number Jessica Thorne, the producer, had given me. She had a contact, a woman named Chloe who used to work event logistics for the foundation. She is skittish, Jessica had warned me, but she knows how the sausage is made. I met Chloe at a laundromat on the south side of town. It was the kind of place where the noise of tumbling dryers drowned out conversation, making it perfect for secrets. Chloe was folding sheets with aggressive precision. She didn't look up when I stood next to her table. "You are the teacher," she said. "I am. You are ruining my life." "You know," she said, snapping a sheet taut. "I still do freelance for Sterling. If they see me talking to you, I am done." "I just want to know about the gala," I said. "The pledge, my father's pledge." She laughed, a harsh barking sound. "The big check?" she asked. "The cardboard one?" "Yes." "It was a prop, honey. We printed it at Kinko's." "I know it was a prop check," I said. "But the money, did the money ever transfer?" Chloe stopped folding. She looked around the laundromat, then leaned in close. "There was no money," she whispered. "It was a deferred pledge, that is what they called it. The donor pledges a sum. We announce it to get the press, and then they sign a restructuring agreement to pay it out over undetermined intervals based on market performance." "So he didn't pay it," I said. "He paid maybe 10 grand, she said, to cover the catering for the night. The rest? Vapor. But the headline ran the next day. Kelly family donates $500,000. And because of that headline, the district gave your dad's firm the audit contract for the bond measure the following week, because he was a trusted partner." "And the STEM wing?" I asked. "Look around the high school," she said, picking up her laundry basket. "Do you see a STEM wing?" "No?" "Exactly. But Price Construction got paid $200,000 for a feasibility study that concluded the ground was too soft to build. They split the money, Eva, the foundation, the district, The contractors. It is a closed loop. She started walking toward the door. The gala isn't a fundraiser, she said over her shoulder. It is a theater production, and we are all just buying tickets to watch them rob us. I drove away from the laundromat with a hollow feeling in my chest. It wasn't just theft, it was vanity. My father had stood on that stage and accepted the applause of the town for a gift he never gave. He had built his reputation as a pillar of the community on a lie, and then used that reputation to secure business deals that paid for the very suit he was wearing. The next morning, I was summoned to the district office, not by HR, but by legal. Arthur Pymes sat behind a desk that looked like it cost more than my annual salary. He didn't offer me a seat. I sat anyway. "Ms. Kelly," he said, folding his hands. "We have a proposal." He slid a single sheet of paper across the mahogany surface. "The district is willing to accept your resignation effective immediately," he said. "In exchange, we will seal your personnel file. We will provide a neutral reference stating you left for personal reasons. Your teaching license will remain unblemished." I read the paper. It was a standard separation agreement, except for the paragraph in bold at the bottom. The employee agrees to a strict non-disclosure regarding all district operations, financial matters, and internal communications, in perpetuity. Breach of this clause will result in immediate litigation for damages. "And if I don't sign?" I asked. Pymes smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Then we proceed with the termination hearing," he said. "We have compiled a dossier. EVA, insubordination, breach of student privacy, creating a hostile work environment. We will not just fire you, we will petition the state board to revoke your license on moral grounds. You will never teach again, not here, not anywhere." "You are blackmailing me," I said. "We are offering you a lifeboat," he corrected. "The ship is going down. Ms. Kelly, you can either get off quietly, or you can drown with your principles." "I didn't sink the ship." "Arthur," I said, standing up, "I just pointed out the hole in the hull." "Take the deal," he said, his voice dropping to a menace. "You are out of your depth. These men, they do not lose." I left the paper on his desk. "I will think about it." I lied. I didn't go home. I went to my parents' house. I needed to see my mother one last time before I did what I had to do. She was in the kitchen, aggressively chopping vegetables. The tension in the house was palpable, a physical weight in the air. "Did you take it?" she asked, without turning around. She knew about the meeting. Of course she knew. "No," I said. She slammed the knife down. "Eva, are you insane?" She spun around, her face blotchy with tears. "They are offering you a way out, a clean slate." "It is not a clean slate. Mom, it is a gag order. If I sign that, I can never talk about the fraud. I can never tell anyone that Dad stole from the school." "He didn't steal," she screamed. "He fixed things. We were drowning. Eva, do you have any idea what it is like to lose everything? To have your friends look at you with pity?" "So you traded your integrity for a country club membership?" I asked quietly. "I traded it for you," she sobbed. "So you could have this life. So you wouldn't have to worry about money." "I never cared about the money. Mom," I said. "I cared about the truth. I cared about being a good person." "Being a good person doesn't pay the mortgage," she cried, gripping the counter. "You are so selfish. You are willing to destroy your father, destroy me, destroy our standing in this town, just to prove you are right about some stupid tablets?" I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the terror in her eyes. It wasn't fear of poverty, it was fear of irrelevance. She was terrified of being stripped of the image she had curated for 30 years. "You don't love me," I said, the realization hitting me with the force of a physical blow. "You love the idea of me. You love the daughter who reflects well on you. But the moment I become inconvenient, the moment I step out of the picture you painted, I am disposable." "That is not true," she whispered, but her eyes looked away. "It is," I said. You want me to take the deal so you can go to brunch next Sunday and pretend everything is fine. You want me to help you lie. I backed away toward the door. I won't do it. Mom, I am sorry you are scared, but I'm not going to help you hide anymore. If you walk out that door, she said, her voice trembling, do not come back. We cannot have a traitor in this house. I know, I said, and I walked out. I felt a profound grief, a tearing in my chest, but beneath it, I felt lighter. The cord was cut. I drove straight to Alan Gold's office. File it, I said. Alan looked up from his desk. The formal complaint? Yes, the State Office of Inspector General, retaliation, financial mismanagement, the whole thing. You know this is nuclear, Alan said. Once we file this, it becomes a public record. The press will find it. I want them to find it, I said. I want it on the record that I didn't resign. I fought. Alan nodded. He pulled a file from his drawer. We have to be careful with the wording, he said. We cannot say Richard Kelly stole money. We have to say, evidence suggests irregularities in vendor procurement involving board member Richard Kelly. We stick to the facts we can prove. Do it, I said. We spent 3 hours drafting the complaint. We attached the photos of the prison tablets. We attached the inventory receipt Sarah had given me. We attached the email chain my father had accidentally forwarded, the one discussing neutralizing me. When Alan finally hit submit on the state portal, I felt a strange sense of calm. It was done. I had blown the whistle. My phone rang. It was Jessica Thorne. Ava, she said, we need you back. Tomorrow night. I can't, I said. I am on administrative leave. If I go on TV, they will fire me for insubordination. Let them, she said. Ava, listen to me. We ran the EIN numbers from the documents you sent us. The whistleblower data matches. We have independent verification that Apex Solutions, the company your father is tied to, has been receiving federal grant money meant for Title I schools. I gripped the phone. Federal money? Yes, this isn't just a local scandal anymore. This is wire fraud across state lines. The FBI is going to be interested in this. If you come on the show, you are not just a teacher complaining about a district, you are a witness to a federal crime. Is Vance coming? I asked. No, she said. He declined, but the spokesperson is coming via satellite. They are going to try to discredit you. You need to be there to defend yourself. I thought about Pimes and his threat. We will petition to revoke your license. I will be there, I said. That evening, there was a school board meeting. It was a closed session, ostensibly to discuss personnel matters, which I knew meant me, but there was a 15-minute window for public comment on non-agenda items at the start. I wasn't supposed to be there. I was banned from school property, but the board meeting was held at the town hall. Not a school. I walked in. The room was packed. Teachers, parents, reporters. The air was thick with tension. When I walked down the center aisle, the room went silent. I saw my father sitting at the board table. He went pale. He whispered something to Sterling, who looked like he wanted to call security. I signed up to speak. I was third on the list. When my name was called, Eva Kelly. There was a ripple of murmurs. I walked to the podium. I adjusted the microphone. I looked at the board members. I looked at Dr. Vance, who was sweating through his collar. I looked at my father, who was staring at the table, refusing to meet my eyes. My name is Eva Kelly, I said. I have been a teacher in this district for 8 years. Ms. Kelly, Sterling interrupted. You are on administrative leave. Is this comment regarding your employment? Because if so, it is a personnel matter and cannot be discussed in open session. It is not about my employment, I said calmly. It is about the tools we give our children. I held up a photo. It was a picture of a student's hand trying to use a stylus on a cracked screen. This is not a political statement, I said. This is a Tuesday in my classroom. We have students who cannot take the state tests because the software crashes. We have students sitting in coats because the heating system wasn't repaired, while we spent $50,000 on a new scoreboard. I looked directly at the camera at the back of the room. We tell our students that honesty matters. We tell them that if they work hard, they will be supported. But right now, the adults in this room are teaching them a different lesson. You are teaching them that image matters more than integrity, that looking good is more important than doing good. I paused. I was offered a deal to stay silent. I said, I was told that if I walked away, my career would be saved, but I cannot teach my students to be brave if I am a coward. So I am not walking away. I am asking the simple question, where did the money go? Time, Sterling snapped. Your 2 minutes are up. I stepped back from the podium. There was no applause, just a heavy, stunned silence. I walked out of the hall. I made it to the parking lot before I heard the footsteps behind me. Eva. It was my father. He wasn't running. He was walking with a stiff, furious gait. I stopped near my car. You just signed your own death warrant, he said. His voice was low, shaking with rage. Do you have any idea what you just did in there? I told the truth. Dad, something you forgot how to do a long time ago. He grabbed my arm. His grip was painful. You think this is about me? He hissed. You think I am the top of the food chain? I am a middleman. Eva, I am the accountant. Who is it then? I asked, yanking my arm away. Who are you protecting? He looked around the dark parking lot. He looked terrified. If you blow this up, he whispered, you blow up more than me. You bring down the mayor. You bring down the senator's re-election fund. These people, they don't just fire you, Eva, they erase you. Are you threatening me? I am warning you, he shouted, his composure finally cracking. I cannot protect you anymore. I kept them off you for a week, but after tonight, you are on your own, and God help you, because they won't stop at a lawsuit. He stared at me, his eyes wild. You should have taken the deal, he said. He turned and walked back toward the town hall, disappearing into the shadows. I got into my car and locked the doors. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely put the key in the ignition. He wasn't just afraid of prison. He was afraid of them. The people above him, the people who turned charity galas into money laundering operations for political campaigns. I drove home, constantly checking my rearview mirror. Every pair of headlights felt like a threat. I pulled into my apartment complex. I walked up the stairs to the 3rd floor. I reached for my keys, but stopped. My door was ajar, just an inch. The wood around the lock was splintered. I froze. I should run. I should call the police. But I pushed the door open. My apartment had been tossed, not ransacked, searched, systematically. Books were pulled from shelves. Cushions were stripped from the couch. My desk drawers were overturned. I stepped over a pile of clothes. I went to the filing cabinet in the corner of my bedroom. I had kept a physical file of everything. The printouts of the emails, the copies of the receipts. The drawer was open. The folder labeled, Larkwell was gone. They hadn't taken my laptop. They hadn't taken my jewelry. They had come for the paper trail. I stood in the middle of my violated sanctuary. My father's warning echoed in my ears. They won't stop at a lawsuit. They were watching. They knew I had the evidence. And now, they had taken it. But they didn't know one thing. I walked to the kitchen. I reached into the back of the freezer. Behind a bag of frozen peas, I pulled out a Ziploc bag. Inside was a USB drive. I had scanned everything. I had backed it up. They could break my door. They could steal my papers. They could threaten my career. But they couldn't erase the truth. I put the USB drive in my pocket. I walked out of the apartment, leaving the door broken open. I wasn't sleeping here tonight. I was going to war. I didn't sleep in my apartment that night. I slept in the back seat of my car, parked in the 24-hour lot of a hospital 3 towns over. It was the only place I could think of where cameras were everywhere, and security guards actually walked the perimeter. I lay curled up under my coat, clutching the USB drive in my pocket like it was a grenade I had forgotten how to throw. By the time the sun came up, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gray, I had made a decision. Fear is a paralysis. It works by making you imagine the worst-case scenario so vividly that you stop moving. But I had already seen the worst case. My father was a criminal. My mother was an accomplice. My career was being strangled. My home had been violated. There was nothing left to imagine. There was only the fight. I drove to a copy shop when it opened at 7. I didn't just make one copy of the drive. I made 10. I bought large manila envelopes. I bought postage stamps. I drove to Alan Gold's office and waited for him in the parking lot. He arrived with a bagel in his mouth and a coffee stain already forming on his shirt. "They broke in," I said, handing him 3 of the envelopes. He stopped chewing. He looked at my face, at the dark circles under my eyes. "Police?" he asked. "No," I said. "If I call the police, it becomes a burglary report. It gets buried. I want this to be evidence of intimidation." "Smart," he said, "but dangerous. Eva, if they are tossing apartments, they are panicked." "I know," I said. "That is why I am giving you these. One for your safe, one for the State Inspector General, one for your partner. And the rest?" "I am mailing them," I said. "To Jessica Thorne in New York, to the FBI field office in Chicago, to a reporter I know at the Washington Post." I looked at him. "It is a distributed record. Alan, if they come for me again, if they burn my apartment down, it won't matter. The truth is in the wind. They cannot catch all of it." Alan took the envelopes. He looked at me with a mixture of professional concern and grudging respect. "We filed the complaint with the State Oversight Office this morning," he said. "They are scheduling preliminary interviews for next week. That is fast. Eva, unusually fast. It means they smell blood." "Good," I said. "But the district knows," he warned. "They were notified the moment the docket opened. Expect a counterstrike." The counterstrike happened at noon. I was sitting in a diner, watching the local news on the television mounted in the corner. Dr. Vance was standing at a podium in the district boardroom. He was flanked by Arthur Pimes and a woman I didn't recognize, a sleek, sharp-eyed crisis management consultant. "We are deeply concerned," Vance said, his voice dripping with paternal disappointment, "about the recent actions of one of our staff members. Ms. Kelly is a valued employee who has unfortunately been under a great deal of personal stress. It appears she has misunderstood certain complex administrative processes regarding grant allocation." He paused, looking sadly at the cameras. "We are doing everything we can to support her during this mental health crisis. However, we cannot allow misinformation to damage the reputation of the generous donors who keep our schools running. The allegations of financial impropriety are baseless, the result of confusion and, let's say, an overactive imagination." I gripped my coffee cup. Mental health crisis, overactive imagination. They were using the oldest weapon in the book. They were painting me as the hysterical woman who couldn't understand the complex math of the men in charge. My phone rang. It was Jessica Thorne. "You saw it?" she asked. "I saw it. They are trying to kill the story before tonight," she said. "They want to make you look like a liability, so we cancel the segment." "Are you canceling?" I asked. "Hell no," Jessica said. "But the stakes just went up. They are sending a spokesperson, not Vance. He is too cowardly. They are sending Elena Cross. She is a heavy hitter. Eva. She spins for oil companies when they spill in the ocean. She is going to come for your throat." "Let her come," I said. "We need you in the studio," she said. "Live? Tonight? Can you get to New York?" "I am already driving," I said. The studio felt different this time. The first time, I had been a novelty, a brave teacher with a sad story. This time, the air was electric with the hum of impending violence. I sat in the makeup chair while a woman applied powder to hide the sleeplessness on my face. "You look fierce," the makeup artist whispered. "Give 'em hell." I walked onto the set. Sarah Jenkins was at the desk, looking like a judge presiding over a capital case. Across from my empty chair sat Elena Cross. Elena was perfect. Her hair was a helmet of blonde precision, Her suit was navy blue, projecting authority. She smiled at me as I sat down. It was the smile of a shark engaging with a seal. "Ms. Kelly," she said smoothly, "I hope you are feeling better." I didn't smile back. "I feel fine, Ms. Cross." The cameras rolled. The red light blinked on. "Tonight," Sarah Jenkins began, "we return to Maple Hollow, where a local scandal has exploded into a national debate about corruption in our schools. Joining us is Eva Kelly, the teacher at the center of the storm, and Elena Cross, representing the Maple Hollow School District." Sarah turned to Elena first. "Ms. Cross, the district claims Ms. Kelly is confused about the finances. Can you explain why the district accepted tablets labeled as prison property?" Elena didn't blink. She turned to the camera, bypassing Sarah, bypassing me, speaking directly to the audience. "Sarah, let's be clear," she said, her voice soothing and reasonable. "Supply chains are messy. We work with third-party vendors to source cost-effective technology. Sometimes, recycled casings are used. That is actually an environmental initiative." Ms. Kelly, in her emotional state, saw a sticker and jumped to a conspiracy. It is unfortunate that she didn't come to us first to ask for clarification. She turned to me, her expression pitying. "Eva, if you had just asked, we could have explained the vendor codes. Instead, you frightened the children and the community." It was masterful. She had turned fraud into recycling. She had turned my whistleblowing into hysteria. Sarah turned to me. "Eva?" I looked at Elena. I looked at the red light. "I did ask," I said. My voice was low, steady. "I asked the facilities manager. He told me not to make it political. I asked the procurement officer. She told me the files were restricted. I asked the superintendent. He put me on leave." I reached into my blazer pocket. I pulled out a piece of paper. It wasn't a prop. It was the timeline Alan and I had built. "Let's look at the dates," I said. On November 12th, the foundation pledged $500,000. On November 14th, Price Construction received a no-bid contract for a study that never happened. On January 3rd, the district received 500 tablets valued at $100,000, which we now know were purchased for $12,000 from a liquidator. Elena interrupted, laughing softly. "These are just numbers thrown around without context. Eva, you are an English teacher, not an accountant." "I am a teacher who knows how to read," I said, cutting her off. "And on February 3rd, at 9:42 p.m., my father, Richard Kelly, the treasurer of the foundation, sent an email to Superintendent Vance." Elena stiffened. The smile didn't drop, but it froze. "In that email," I continued, holding up the screenshot, "he didn't discuss supply chains. He didn't discuss environmental initiatives. He wrote, 'Neutralize the teacher narrative. Make her look like she is cracking under pressure.'" I looked directly at Elena. "Is that a supply chain issue, Ms. Cross? Or is that a conspiracy to destroy a whistleblower?" Elena opened her mouth, but Sarah Jenkins interjected. "We have seen that email," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the tension. "And Ms. Cross, before you deny it, our investigative team has spent the last 48 hours verifying the metadata." Sarah picked up a folder from her desk. "But we found something else." The room went deadly silent. "We obtained the bank records for Apex Solutions," Sarah said. "The vendor paid by the district. The signatories on the account are James Sterling, Gavin Price, and Richard Kelly." Elena Cross stopped smiling. She looked down at her notes, suddenly very interested in her pen. "Ms. Cross," Sarah pressed, "why are board members of a charitable foundation personally receiving checks from the school district they are supposed to be helping?" Elena looked up. The polish was gone. She looked like a deer in headlights. I cannot speak to the private finances of individual board members," she stammered. "I am here to discuss district policy." "It seems this is district policy," Sarah said. Then, the screen behind us changed. It was the archival footage. My father, 3 years ago, standing on the stage at the gala. Transparency, the digital version of my father said, raising his glass. Community, trust, that is what we are building here. The camera cut back to the studio. It zoomed in on my face. I looked at the image of my father. I saw the man I had worshipped as a child. I saw the man who had taught me to tie my shoes. And I saw the man who had sold his soul to keep his country club membership. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I didn't wipe it away. He called me a lowly teacher, I said softly. He said I didn't understand the real world, but I think I understand it now. The real world is where people like him take from people who have nothing and call it charity. I looked at the camera. And the real world is where we stop letting them get away with it. The segment ended. The lights went down. Elena Cross ripped her microphone off and stormed out of the studio without a word. Jessica Thorne ran onto the set. She hugged me. "You got them," she whispered. "My God, Ava, you got them." I didn't feel like I had gotten them. I felt like I had just watched my own house burn down. I drove back to Maple Hollow in a daze. My phone was vibrating constantly. Hundreds of texts, thousands of notifications, but I didn't look at them. When I crossed the town line, I saw the flashing lights. There were police cars outside the district office, but there were also people, hundreds of them. I slowed down. The lawn in front of the administrative building was packed. Teachers holding signs that said, "Neutralize this." Parents holding up cracked tablets. Students, my students, sitting in a circle on the steps, holding candles. It wasn't a riot. It was a vigil for the truth. I saw Barbara, the science teacher who had warned me to stay silent. She was holding a microphone, speaking to the crowd. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to be the hero yet. I drove to my parents' house. The driveway was empty. The lights were off. I walked up to the front door. I rang the bell. I knocked. Silence. I peered through the window of the sunroom. The furniture was there, the wicker chairs, the expensive rug, but the life was gone. I walked around to the back. The garage was empty. They had run. My mother, who cared more about appearances than anything else, had fled in the night rather than face the neighbors. My father, the pillar of the community, had abandoned his fortress. I stood in the dark backyard, looking at the manicured hedges. They had chosen exile over accountability. They had chosen to run rather than look me in the eye. I went back to my apartment. I pushed open the broken door. I sat on my couch. Amidst the mess the intruders had made, I felt an exhaustion so deep it felt like it was in my marrow. The next morning, the mail arrived. There was a certified letter from the State Department of Education. I opened it, expecting to see a notification about the investigation, expecting to see that Vance had been suspended. Instead, I read the header, Notice of Intent to Revoke Teaching Licensure. Reason, gross insubordination, breach of contract, unprofessional conduct. The letter was dated yesterday, even as the FBI was closing in, even as the town was marching on their lawn, even as their lies were being broadcast to millions. The machine was still trying to crush me. They had filed the paperwork to kill my career as their final act of spite. They were going down, but they were determined to take me with them. I dropped the letter on the floor. I looked around my empty apartment. I had no job. I had no family. I had a broken door and a legal battle that would likely last for years. But I was free. I picked up my phone. There was a voicemail. It had come in at 3 a.m. It was from a number I didn't recognize. I pressed play. There was static, the sound of wind, or maybe a car moving on a highway. "Ava," it was my father. His voice sounded hollow, dead. "You think you won," he said. There was no anger in his voice anymore, just a cold, factual detachment. "You think because the news lady smiled at you. It is over." He laughed, a short, dry sound. "We are just the local branch. Ava, Sterling, Price, me, we are small fish." A pause. "The grant money came from Washington. The contracts went to companies that donate to people you have never heard of. You didn't just expose a school board, you turned on the light in a room where very powerful people were sleeping. The wind noise got louder. I am going away. Your mother is with me. Do not look for us, and do not think this is over. His voice dropped to a whisper. You don't know who you embarrassed, Ava. You really don't. The line clicked dead. I stood there in the silence of the apartment. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance. I walked to the window and looked out at Maple Hollow. It looked the same as it always did. Quiet, neat, orderly, but I knew better now. Underneath the manicured lawns and the brick facades, the roots were rotten. I had cut down the tree, but my father was right. I had no idea how deep the roots really went. I turned away from the window. I went to the kitchen and made a pot of coffee. Let them come. I was ready. Thank you for listening to this story. This was my parents called me just a lowly teacher, until Dad saw me on national TV that night. I would love to know where you are listening from, so please leave a comment below with your city or country. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of betrayal, justice, and the dark secrets families keep, please make sure to subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel. And finally, I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think Eva made the right choice destroying her family to save the school? Or should she have taken the deal? Let me know in the comments in English. I read every single one. Until next time.